Welcome to Proof of PR, your passport to the world of public relations for teams building on-chain. I'm your host, Kelley Weaver, CEO of Melrose PR, a leading provider of crypto communications and PR strategy, and founder of BITWIRE, the modern newswire reimagined for today's comms professionals. Get ready for an inside look into the future of finance, technology, and entrepreneurship from those driving innovation in our space. Join us as we learn how they generate headlines, cut through the noise, and grow their brand awareness through media placements, press mentions, and thought leadership. These are the stories behind their success. This is Proof of PR. Welcome to Proof of PR. I'm sitting down with Eve Smith Davies, co-founder and brand director at UME, a design studio for frontier innovation. Eve creates magnetic brands for emerging technology, and her Web3 portfolio speaks for itself. UME rebranded Mina Protocol ahead of its mainnet launch, helping drive an ICO that sold out in 4 hours and raised over $18 million. She's also rebranded Aztec, SIA, and worked with a long list of household names you'd recognize like Whole Foods, Hilton, Converse, SoFi, and Samsung. She taught marketing, PR, and branding at Parsons, and we recently got to share the stage together at ETH Denver 2026 on a panel called What Leaders Can Do to Make Marketing Successful. Eve, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to Proof of PR.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I'd love to hear about your Web3 journey. How did someone of your background end up building brands, going from consumer goods to blockchain protocols?
Yeah, that's a great question. I see a through line. So I've always really been drawn to systems change. I started my career in sustainability in the early aughts, moved from kind of the push side of let's see some change happening to the demand generation side, looking at branding for mission driven companies, nonprofits, and really edge cases for more mainstream organizations and brands. I also have a background as a meditator, which for me has always been about looking for ways to cut through all the noise and all the bullshit and see what really matters and kind of tune in that way. And it was actually, I started becoming entrepreneurial, really not from an ambition, which is probably telling, and I shouldn't say out loud, but because I wanted to be able to go on retreats for months out of the year. And so in my late 20s, like that's how I started my business and working for myself. I see UME as an extension of that systems change work. So, what my co-founder G and I are really trying to do with UME as an experiment, we've been around for 8 years, is reimagine how we work. We believe that how we work impacts what we create. And so these ideas of dignity, power dynamics, letting old systems go, reimagining new ones that are more regenerative and fair, like that's always been there. And there are all these other sectors that I think are very simpatico with Web3 and predate Web3. And I was a part of those. And so it's, I think that I have a core belief that we have an opportunity to reimagine our relationship to each other, to the planet, and to the power structures that shape all of those relationships. But organic change or, consumer ads or like trying to get people to care on its own and community building and organizing even aren't enough. I think we really need tech that builds this into the base layer and gives us a chance at swimming upstream. And I think Web3 at its best is that infrastructure. So when I intersected with Web3 back in 2018, I was really kind of like a prime target, and it made a lot of sense. And yeah.
You've worked with some of the most technical projects, and we've worked on some of these. We've had clients in common like Mina and Aztec. You also worked with SIA. How do you build a compelling brand around something that most people can't even explain?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first, it would be good to level set, like, what do we mean when we say brand? So for us, a brand is not just a logo or like a slogan that you go out with for that week. It's really who you are and why you exist from the inside out. And so, for folks who aren't familiar with the practice of branding and all of the special language, it's like your mission, your vision and values, your what category you're in and what sets you apart. These questions of how do I look and feel and what do I actually say when I get out into the world? All of that is informed by brand. And I like to think about it as like the base layer of your marketing stack. So It's like the very bottom and the foundation that informs everything else, and that everything else is built on. And when it's done really right, it gives your marketing and your PR so much depth and richness to run and play with, and so much legs. So, I would say, like, how do you do it? So how do you go about building a brand? It for us, it has to start with research, right? So you're trying to build a brand that does three things at once. You're trying to build something that is authentic and accurate, right? To the founders, to the team, to the tech. You're trying to strike a really deep chord with audiences and really like hit on a need and a feeling that they're experiencing. And you're trying to do that in a way that is radically unique in the space that no one's ever seen before. And, it's easy to do one or two, but it's very challenging, very hard to do all three at once and do it in a way that's like true enough today, but aspirational enough and like future forward enough to where you can grow into it and it's durable and it lasts. So it's no easy task, but the cool thing is that there's a method. And when, we talk about research and process, each of the research informs authenticity and accuracy. So we look inward to the project and really try to dig deep into the tech to understand it. So we talk to founders, we talk to heads of product, we do product walkthroughs. I dig into life cycle diagrams. We get really nerdy into, if it's an existing, been around for a while project, we'll look at all of their existing explainers. We'll get on their Discord. Like, we really go deep and dig around in there. We are also, because we wanted to strike a chord with audiences, we do audience research, right? So, we're looking for blind spots and really empathic points of resonance with builders, developers, different kinds of users. We're thinking about the beachhead users that they're trying to get like right now to survive and get more funding. And we're thinking about the users that they hope to attract down the road. And so we're really kind of trying to figure out, what do they need and what do they have in common. And then we're looking at the market. We're looking at not just the competition. And we all know this is a super hyper competitive, fast moving, dizzying space that's kind of ridiculous. But we're also looking at the comms environment. We're looking at culture at large to see what's relevant and resonant so that we can really create something that's truly unique in the space. And so as we gather all those inputs, we kind of walk around these kind of insights to triangulate a deeper truth of what's happening here. Right. And so it's more than just repackaging what's in the founder's head or looking at the tech and just explaining it. We're not just translating tech. What we're trying to do is really like extract them like from their worldview of like, what is the worldview behind this tech? Like, what's motivating it? What are they trying to accomplish? What do they believe is true? What do they believe is missing? And then bridge the tech with the worldview in a way that's like really elegant and beautiful. And when you can do that, you create something really magical and magnetic. And for like, how do we do it? I think that at UME, we are really both like technical enough to dig in deep and get it really quick. And I think that speaks to kind of a really unique subset of communicators who want to get deeper into that. But also we have lives outside of Web3, which I think is really important actually to be a strategic advantage. So, we work in this space, we love this space, we understand this space, but we're also in biotech and new energy and AI. And so we're able to not be so insular and stuck, and we can have like a fresh take on a moment and kind of give creative life to something that in a way that it doesn't sound like anything else or feel like anything else.
And you can tell, I mean, I encourage the audience to go and check out the brands that we're talking about, because you can feel the difference. The Mina story is a great one. They got a cease and desist, rebranded, and then their ICO sold out in 4 hours. Walk me through what actually changed, because that was a project that had an existing life before you came on, and then why it worked.
I mean, that's it. That's a great question. So, I think that, and this is really a good like insight and lesson of like, hey, what were the conditions for such great success? Like, let's look at it. You had amazing timing, right? So the cease and desist letter, I mean, bummer, right? I pray none of you ever receive one because it just sucks. But like, also, it was a like a really great silver lining moment. And Claire Cart, their head of marketing, kind of saw it that way, right? And so kudos to her. But it was, right timing, and that they had this truly unique product. Like no one had really used ZK or zero knowledge to attack the trilemma before, right? So they were zigging where everyone else was zagging, to look at decentralization, security, scalability in that way. And it was in development. So there was enough there. They had been building together. The team knew what they were trying to do. You had a somewhat established culture, right? And so there was in development, but before testnet and certainly before mainnet. And so it gave us a really nice amount of runway, right? They were like built enough, but not like we need to go prime time tomorrow, right? So we had enough time to do our work. It was also right after their Series A raise. And so they were funded. And so they had like a little bit of time and space to do it. And like I mentioned, a really phenomenal head of marketing that was an advocate and guide for the founding team on the inside, and that could really understand and translate and kind of run with what we gave them. So I think all of those things coming together is part of what made it work. I think, from a process standpoint, some things that I'll call out that were really important for this client was like, they already had 3,000 community members, and we did surveys with all of them. And we did a lot of different interviews with advisors, investors, hyper users, node operators, like people who were playing around and working with Coda at the time is what it was called. And so we were really like checking our biases in the right way, like I mentioned before. And, what actually changed and shifted. Yeah, we rebranded. We did research, the strategy, the naming, the visual identity, and the website and all these things, but it was the through line, right? So we were able to figure out like, okay, what's the unlock? And, for us, it was really this idea of lightness and to talk about this consistent, like 22 kilobyte blockchain size that remains consistent because of recursive tech and the way that ZK was creating proofs of the previous proof in order to sync the blockchain, right? So this idea of like, how do we talk about that in a way that is emotionally resonant, that's new and unique, and that is both like has head and heart, is technically true, but also opens up the door to this like emotional world that we want to tap into. And so this idea of like the world's lightest blockchain powered by participants was our unlock. And I think what was really smart about that is that the world's lightest blockchain is it's kind of like a really extreme claim, right? And so even if you're skeptical, you want to like check it out. But it also is kind of it's a really clear signal to like what this is. And no one before or since has been using the word light to describe their blockchain and like to use the idea of lightness. It tells you also who it's for because it's powered by participants. And then it kind of, if you can add 1+1, you see that, oh, it's light and powered by participants. That must mean it's like, okay, on a phone, it's like accessible, right? You see the accessibility baked into it. And, like I was mentioning, everything kind of came together from the inside out. So you have this like it's really authentic to the tech and to the vision of what they're trying to do. It was really unique in the market, which at the time was very dark space, tech bro, and this was, I think, one of the first projects that was seriously even just raising the idea of going more mainstream and being more for everyday people in a decentralized way by, hey, you will be able to sync a node and run a node from your phone. And so it was really resonant with the community and with others. They were hungry for it. They were hungry for access and feeling like, hey, there's a space for me here, even if, I'm not like a super technical developer or, if I don't have a ton of hardware and, I just have like off the shelf gear, I can participate in a really meaningful way and be rewarded for it. So, all of that to say is that like this idea of lightness and the way that Mina sounds light, right, it has minimal in it, the visual identity, it just all came together in a really powerful package that was meaningful and that spoke to the moment and the community.
You recently wrote about moving beyond vanity metrics in Web3. What are founders actually measuring, and what should they be measuring instead?
I did do that. I think that I'll do like a two-parter. So, I think, I come from a branding background, so I will say like brand gives marketing legs and real depth. I think if you're measuring brand, you can measure awareness. Like brand impacts your ability to capture awareness, because that's how you break through the noise. You look different, you sound different. Everything is matching and aligning. You're striking a chord in my heart that is yearning to be like, like I am really resonating with this. It's magnetic. Engagement, affinity, and traction, right? And that's just your basic marketing funnel. Like hopefully you know that. But it's like, can you break through the noise? Are people going to engage? Or are they going to scroll past you? Is there affinity? Is there trust? Is there emotional connection, positive regard? And then is there traction? Is there actually a moment of conversion where that affinity turns into some sort of action where I become like a user, a contributor, I, create capital or something? Like that's really a basic package. I think that one of the things that we like when we think about what brand offers, it's like you have so many more benefits from brand than just those vanity metrics that people can get distracted by on marketing. And when I talk about vanity metrics, like just to go, that's like when I say that, what I mean is founders looking for sugar high spikes, really pushing their marketers to go for quantity over quality, which that's annoying for everybody. I understand that sometimes their investors are asking them for it, but still, I think that part of it is ego. But if we're going after quantity and not quality, we're not measuring what matters. And so you're capturing this really expensive activity over real resonance, growth, and value. And there's a huge opportunity cost to that. And so for me, and as a brander who thinks more long-term and thinks about long-term value and like what is always true, I think a lot about behavior as a filter. So retention over reach, repeat usage over time, right? Like meaningful product interaction, that sort of thing, and I think the specifics depend on if you're earlier growth or mature stage, but I really would love to see more founders having the courage to flip the script and say, like, actually, what you should be measuring me on is this, not an airdrop bump, right? Like real metrics that lead to more credibility, that have more real value, that allow you to grow sustainably and help communities stick with you through inevitable bumps. And so, like, the way that brand supports that is that it gives you more of that. It gives you more of that through line. It gives you more depth and meaning to be able to go to your audience and say, like, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going. And we can market around that and get like excited and kind of like get more people aware. But there's actually something really deep and meaningful for them to like land into.
You've worked with some household names that everybody knows, like Whole Foods, Samsung, Converse. Where does brand building break down differently in the crypto space?
I love this question, and I'm so glad that you asked it. So this is something that I think about a lot. So, just in more traditional spaces, a traditional company is hierarchical and they are building a brand for a passive consumer, and they're kind of on high and on ivory tower, and they're here, I bestow this product to you, please. It's very transactional, but there is this idea of active company and brand builder and very passive consumer. In Web3, it completely flips the script, right? Like you are building with active participants. There is no network without node operators and users and people building on top of it, right? The value comes from that activity and those people. In traditional companies, you have a really hard line between what's internal and external, right? It's almost like a firewall. And in Web3, what's inside the company, it becomes more permeable, right? Like you might have like your community manager is kind of sitting in the tension of that, right? Like are they inside? Are they outside? Where are they living? You have your ecosystem partners as well. That membrane is so much more permeable. And in traditional spaces, like brands are super in control and guarded of their brand. Like, hey, we're going to make sure that we're managing it. Nobody like goes into the no-no zone, et cetera. And then in Web3, you have brands that are global, but also really co-owned by their communities and totally riffed on all the time. I think that those traditional brands that you mentioned would die and kill for the kind of engagement that they see in Web3, but they would never in a million years have the balls to give the reins over and to release control. And so you're not going to get, it's always kind of like a yin and yang, like you're not going to get that kind of engagement without releasing some of the control. And I think that's what's really beautiful about decentralized communities and Web3, right? Which makes it so powerful. So I absolutely think that there's a lot that traditional brands can learn from Web3, but I think there's also a lot Web3 can learn from more traditional brands. And so like, if I'm looking and, want to talk about my hopes for Web3, it's that as it matures, we'll see more people across all disciplines really respecting the craft of brand marketing and PR, understand that they're distinct practice areas. People go to school for it, people study and learn about it. It's art and science. There's methods, there's all kinds of frameworks and methodologies. And, this has been around for a really long time. And so, I think that that is something that I think we could learn from more traditional brands. I think there's also this, I don't know what it is. There's something about Web3 that feels like there's so much chasing trends, being a fast follower, wanting to respond, feeling FOMO, and just kind of being frenetic and not staking a unique space or claim. There's not a lot of real bravery, even though nobody is precious. And so that feels like such a missed opportunity, like so many roles are being rewritten, and yet I would love to see more unique and vibrant brands like expanding what I even could have imagined as possible, right? And doing it in a meaningful way that like points back to big ideas and big bold tech moves that they're making. And then lastly, I'd say is like consistency over time is how trust compounds. And I really feel like Web3 pivots messaging all the time and, wondering, why aren't we getting like the kind of traction, or why is this so up and down? And I think that goes back to staking a unique space and just being a little bit more confident and mature and saying, yes, we can be responsive, but we need to be consistent around our values, really like know where we're going. And like going back to that meditative focus in space, it's like, I see everything happening, but we're going this way and we're walking. Like, do you want to walk with us? And I really would love to see more leadership in that direction.
You also talk about finding that one right key insight. And so how do you find it, and how do you know when you've actually got it?
I mean, I've talked a lot about research already. And it's so funny because like I don't know about you, and I'd really love to hear from your listeners, viewers, but like nobody wants to pay for research, but it's so important and it's such a key part of the process. And we actually don't really engage with brands with projects unless there is a little bit of research that we're able to do. But finding like this one right key insight, that might be a little dramatic, but it really is about getting in, like trusting the research process. Like I mentioned, like we're kind of walking around, we're looking for everybody's blind spots. Everybody has them. Like it's not a bad thing, it's a natural thing, right? So it's like founders are too close, and they need to be like a little high on their own supply sometimes. Communities can be too enthusiastic because they've already sunk a lot of cost into it, or you're talking to the people who are self-selecting to talk to you and they're very excited. Or their competitors, like I mentioned, are all kind of a mirror, like a sea of sameness, and like there's really a lot of bias and blind spots around all of that. And so it's really helpful to have some outside perspective and like fresh eyes to take a look at it. I think that the insight is the right insight, whatever. The insight that we usually end up landing on is the one that keeps coming up in all these different conversations in different ways. And you're seeing different facets of the same crux. Like for Aztec, for example, the insight for me was really that this brand, this project, for being so wild and intense with inventing math, like the math didn't exist, so we invented it. Oh, the programming language didn't exist, so we wrote this new programming language. Oh, the network didn't exist, so we built that too, by the way. But for all of the amazing genius that they've poured into it, the brand and what makes it really special, it's not about Aztec at all. It's this whole new world that it unlocks for builders, right? Because it's infrastructure at the end of the day, in many ways, right? So, ergo, the Renaissance, right? And the Renaissance isn't one person. It's a space for all these different kinds of people to mix and make each other better. And so, you have it when it's simple, true, a little uncomfortable. And, it's from that insight that unlocks a strategy, that the name, hopefully, if you get to name, or the visual identity becomes this through line that's kind of feels obvious and exciting in hindsight, but you never would have known what it was beforehand.
Did you work with Aztec on the naming?
No, we did not. That was already in existence. And it actually, I was a little like, does anyone have some, is anyone here from Central South America? Like, what is this about? It's actually an old acronym. It's like autonomous, zero knowledge. I forget, but yeah, it meant something. And so, we rocked it. And at the end of the day, a name is a vessel. You get to fill it. And I think that it totally works and is exciting. And they had been building for 8-9 years at the time too. So there was equity in what they had built. And so I think it was really good to keep that.
And what you did was incredible. So I want to underscore that.
Most newswire platforms were built for a different era of PR. Mass distribution, bloated pricing, coverage that looks impressive but rarely delivers real visibility. BITWIRE was built to change that. We give modern PR teams direct access to curated Tier 1 publishers that actually reach your audience, from leading crypto and business outlets to global financial media. Instead of blasting your news everywhere, BITWIRE focuses on quality distribution that builds credibility, authority, and search visibility through real placements and permanent links. Every distribution includes guaranteed publication, so you know exactly where your story will appear with no uncertainty and no wasted spend. Our platform lets you create and distribute a press release in minutes through a clean, intuitive workflow designed by PR professionals who understand what's at stake every time you hit publish. With fast turnaround times, your announcement moves quickly from submission to live coverage, helping you stay ahead of fast-moving markets and news cycles. No confusing subscriptions, no unnecessary spend. Just transparent, a la carte pricing so you can choose exactly where your news appears and scale as you grow. And when you need support, our team delivers unparalleled customer service at every step, from submission through publication, ensuring your release runs smoothly and successfully. Because today, it's not about sending your news everywhere. It's about placing it where it matters. BITWIRE, your news amplified.
A lot of crypto projects that we talk to complain about having thrown money at marketing and they didn't get anything in return. What do you think people are doing wrong when they complain about this?
I think it's important, again, and I guess this is the teacher in me, let's just, and Kelley, tell me if you think that this is how I think about brand marketing and PR as a stack. So brand is your base layer. It's who you are and why you exist, right? It's your identity, at your core, right? And then marketing is how you reach and resonate.
It's the soul of your company.
It's your soul. It's your soul, which is why as a meditator, I feel really this is it. I feel really passionate about the practice. Marketing is how you reach and resonate with people, right? How you show up in the world, what you're wearing, what you're saying, where you're going, who you're with, all of those things is marketing. I think a lot about PR is how you earn credibility and how you earn positive regard from other people who matter and high signal people. And so, I think a lot of projects, if they're doing marketing or they're paying for ads or whatever they're doing, they're sponsoring events, they're hiring KOLs, I would just want to ask, if you skipped over the brand work and that base layer infrastructure, if your foundation's rocky, it could be the marketing, or you could have a brand problem, right? If the brand isn't there, the marketing has nothing to work with, and then they keep having to find new ways to talk about something, right? Brand really accelerates and empowers marketing and PR to do amazing work. And so, I think that something could look like a marketing problem. It could be an underlying brand problem. Because you really can't market your way to trust. You really have to do the deep thinking to figure out what is my soul? What is my identity before you start trying to have conversations with people and kind of get out in the world and get attention. Attention for what? What are you basing any of those decisions on? And bless the marketers who are trying to get information out of founders, trying to figure out what they're doing each day. That's exhausting. That doesn't necessarily build, equity. You're chasing a bunch of different things. You're trying to get attention and traction. But the more you have these through lines that that you can stand behind, values, big ideas, that will really give you legs.
Completely agree. And as you're talking here, I'm thinking about the way that AI is changing the world. And I feel that the brands with a soul and who really build brand equity and do the foundational work are going to outlast any of these other brands that are just thrown together today. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that. I think that AI is a rapidly developing and amazing tool set, right? Like, and so if I say anything about what it's capable of today, like it will be obsolete fairly soon. I will say that when you're talking about soul and when you're talking about what do you as a founder believe, because you're a human, I'm going to assume that you get to what's true through other humans pushing you. And to date, I really haven't seen an AI model, even if you're saying like, please help me, please push my blind spots, please do this. You can't do this alone, right? Like it doesn't work that way. It really is unpacked with other people. And like I said earlier, you think about inputs, outputs, right? High quality inputs, high quality outputs. What are you prompting the AI to do? How are you describing your audience? Do they know about the audience? How are you describing and kind of like figuring out what's important to your investors and your founders? I think maybe in, I don't know how long from now, I could imagine a day where you have an agent that's like pulling every email and like stalking people online, and you're able to buy their data sets and, tag their agents to see what they're doing and exchange information that way, and kind of maybe develop something. But, until then, maybe, you need to be able to get those inputs organized and together to tell this magic box like what you should be doing and creating high quality inputs, high quality outputs. And even still, it needs a soul. It's not just like what's relevant, what's unique, what's authentic, and then I want to package that in a factual way. It is a creative endeavor, right? This isn't just like, it's both head and heart. It's like art and science. And so these things need to come together in a way that is unexpected, which AI isn't that great at doing right now, and deeply emotionally resonant and checked, right? And like half of the success, we haven't mentioned this, but another part of what UME does is organizational alignment, right? So we build these magnetic brands that really win in these hyper competitive spaces, but we also look at like, hey, how do you align organizations for growth and scale? And your people and the people that believe in this mission are equally as important, and how they come together, how they work, how they live the values, how they're going about achieving whatever mission you have. That is more than half of the equation for success, right? And the whole branding process brings them on board. The whole branding process makes them become advocates, champions, and hold you to a higher account as a founder, right? So you don't lose your way, right? It's a really incredible, like cultural and sometimes like technical like investment and kind of buffer for like what makes you special when you go from like, especially in R&D, to a more like commercialized product in some spaces. So yeah, you got me like way out there, Kelley, but I think that brands with souls will be more impactful, at least.
I actually, if you're willing, I'd love to dig in a little bit further into what UME provides there, because I think it's really important. Can you talk about the organizational structure work a little bit more? Because I think that's something that, it's so important for growth and scale. And it's something that a lot of founders probably aren't thinking about, honestly. It's like, how do you organize people to all be on the same page and on the same mission?
Right. Especially when, when we're doing brand work, it's because you're growing and there's a transition happening. Usually you're going from like an R&D project to like test net, mainnet, a product launch. You're pivoting into a new market. You're launching a new product that's going to be really important. You need to reach new audiences. Whatever it is, the business is in flux and transition. And a lot of the time, you're going from research teams that are very engineering heavy and have a specific culture and way of working. And generally, not always, but generally they skew male, and generally they have a kind of disposition and way of working that's really different once you bring on marketing and ops and your business development and head of product and all these other people. It can be a culture shock, right? And so not only are you trying to launch a brand, get tech out there, but you're trying to do all of that when you're like sometimes like tripling in size. And there's so much stress to an organization and to founders, especially if you're a first-time founder. And so this offering of organizational alignment, it comes from the deeply held belief that brands are lived from the inside out. So we've talked about the outside a lot, right? Because we're talking about brand marketing and PR, but there's an inside too. And the inside looks like the technical decisions that you make, how you engage in sourcing, how you spend your money, how you treat your employees, how you look at partnerships. It looks like, this whole rubric of how you organize teams and workflows. All of that is also part of your brand because it's part of your identity and who you are. So we really believe that successful projects are aligned from the inside out. And so branding is often what people come into first a lot of the time in Web3, but then they see, hey, this is really hard to live up to this. It's where I want to go. You basically have taken my heart and plastered it on a wall. It feels scary and amazing. How are we going to get there? Oh yeah, plus we're growing like crazy. I have so much pressure from my investors. And so what we do is, we come in, we look at strategic road mapping and saying, okay, we help hold space and create strategies for growing teams. We look at ways of working, leadership development, leadership and executive coaching. We also host retreats and offsites for teams to help with planning and to kind of host that with both like an eye on strategy and well-being. And we find that, especially with our like investor friends, that so often we hear that projects don't necessarily fail because the tech fails or the community fails. It's usually a breakdown internally with people and teams. And I think this tech is so important and the people that we work with are so brilliant. I don't want them to fail for either of those two reasons. And so that's kind of how I see my job.
I love that so much because it's so true. And if you think about all the big brands that resonate, it's like their employees love them. Everybody lives and breathes the brand, the communities, like all the stakeholders, internal and external. So that was so well said. Thank you. We were just on a panel together at ETH Denver, and we were talking about the power of brand and thought leadership. What was one thing that you said to the audience that you want more founders to actually hear?
I talked a lot about how brand is infrastructure, not decoration. I think just kind of getting that understanding of like, it's your soul, it's your identity, it's operational, it's your operating system, it's your OS for your team, your decisions, how you go to market. Your brand values are really your cheat code for that internal alignment for getting people on board. But it also is like your brand values, once they're articulated, you've already had them. But once we extract them from this implicit ether space, make them really explicit for every team member, not just you and your right hand, but everybody sees that, then you're making technical decisions based on your brand values too. So we really see brand as infrastructure, not decoration, although it can be pretty. And, if you invest in that brand infrastructure properly, it'll deliver real returns, right? Like we talked about. And so, yeah, just think about it like a house. Like you need a strong foundation, and don't get upset if you try to go to market without a strong foundation. Get help instead.
I mean, that sort of leads me to my last question, which we talked a lot about rebrands and brands in later stages, but what advice would you give to a founder who's just building their brand from scratch?
Yeah, great. I love this. First, I would say congratulations. You have something worthy of branding and worthy of your time. And that's huge. So, that's amazing. There's a method, a tried and true process, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of methods and frameworks for doing this. You as a founder must be engaged. This isn't something that you can give to someone else because see previous conversation about your soul. So unless you want to offload that, you need to be super engaged in the process. And at the same time, you cannot do it alone. So you have to show up. There's a way of doing it, but you can't do it alone. So a good place to start is by, really putting your ideas on paper. What does make me, what is true to what I'm building? What is my mission? Why do I exist? There are a lot of frameworks you can pull from. Ask Claude to interview you, to like interview me and ask me a million questions to help me like get my ideas on paper. You see gaps where you're like, okay, it's something about this, or this is kind of getting close. And then once you've done as much thinking as you can, once you've looked at what's true to you, once you've thought as much as you can or talked to as many people as you can that are in your like community or user audience that you are looking for, and you've looked at the market like you're probably doing anyway all the time, it's time to work with other people. Like a mirror can't see itself. You have to have a mirror to see yourself. You need somebody else to reflect back to you. Like blind spots are real. And so, gather your team, right? Like the more people you engage in the process, even if it's just like, hey, it's not decision by committee, but it's like the more people that are engaged in the process, the more people feel ownership over the outcome, the more blind spots are illuminated so that you're not walking into a landmine, and like the smarter it all gets. And so, I think when done well, like what we build together through this process is emergent. Like you could never have conceived of it on your own or at the start, or I would even say like with AI, like that is the point, that it is something that is born, that is like bigger than everybody else, right? And for founders, that's scary because up until now, you are the brand, it is you. And so there's that we could go into that for a while, Kelley, of like just kind of like the personal schism of the like, oh, I'm birthing something and now part of my soul is out there, but like I'm still me, or who am I and what is that? Right. But that's what growth requires. It requires creating something that is living outside of you so other people can see it and attach to it and help it grow. Right. I just had a thought. My head of growth will be upset if I don't say we do have this offering for founders who are kind of in the earlier stages. Like we're seeing a lot of how the space is maturing, and like it's getting really competitive. Capital right now is like harder and harder to access, and investors really want to see market traction. And so you're like, I have a project, I need to get traction, so I need to talk about it in some way. But I like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to talk about my project, name my project, get it out there? We have something called Sprint Shop that is geared toward, it's a program that kind of condenses what we do into the essentials, like everything you need and nothing you don't. And we work with a select few early stage folks every year to help them, kind of give them what is usually reserved for kind of larger organizations or people who are a little bit further down the road. But we think it's really helpful to kind of help mature the space. And because the market is shifting so much right now, we see the need. So there's also that. So no matter where you go, no matter who you look for, just make sure you get help and that you're not doing it alone.
I love the concept of a mirror. That's such a good example, because you need someone to show you and work with you on this process. So anyway, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much, Eve. Yeah. Where can people keep up with all the work that you're doing and get in touch with UME?
Oh, yeah. So we're, I'm on Twitter, I'm at Here Now Eve, which kind of is, at Here Now Eve. UME is umedesign.co, UME, like you and me. And yeah, we are, we're on all the channels and kind of all the places. And yeah, we're often at conferences. And so just pop by and say hello or reach out to us.
Thank you, Eve.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kelley.
Thanks for tuning in to Proof of PR. This episode was brought to you by BITWIRE.com, the modern newswire reimagined for today's comms professionals. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen today. To stay up to date on upcoming guests and news, visit proofofpr.com or follow us on Twitter at proofofpr. Until next time, keep learning, innovating, and hodling.